Hello, Father Mark here. It's day 98 of the Bible in a Year. We are reading 1 Samuel chapters 6 through 8, and chapter 6 begins with the ark being returned because the Philistines can't handle it. It's too hot to handle. All of these things, bad things are happening to them. Their idols are tumbling down and they're getting tumors on their skin, and there's rats and mice all over, and some sort of plague and disease. And so they want to return it, and they're saying, well, maybe this is the cause, and they're testing it, and they are asking their diviners and their priests. And it's kind of interesting that even these pagans, even these Philistines, have a religious sense, and in fact, just about every culture understands that you have to make amends for sin. You have to make up. If you offend, the true God or a true divinity, you're going to have to make an offering, or make it up, a guilt offering, as it says there. And that's an Israelite term, but they themselves come up with it, even though they're not Israelites. They say, we can't just return this ark. We've got to, return it with interest. We got to give something, a guilt offering. And so they ask their priests, what should we give? And they say, well, let's make some little gifts for Israel and for the God of Israel, 5 little statues of golden mice and 5 little statues of tumors, to congratulate the God of Israel for the victory of sending tumors and mice to conquer us, and we will do this so that maybe we can be a guilt offering. We can be forgiven for our offending the God of Israel. So they decide to do that, and that's what they do. They send it, but they have a religious sense about the ark that the Israelites believe that only Levites could touch the ark, and so they're realizing that they've got to, and they're going to do a test. They're going to see if the ark will go back by itself, to Israel, to the Israelites. And so they kind of send it in a cart with 2 milch cows, which means that they've never been used before. The Israelites had an idea that if a cow has been used for profane secular work, then it's not fit for sacred purposes anymore. It has to be it's kind of an unused cow. And so they get these 2 cows, but they are cows that have calves, and they're going to do a test. They shut the calves at home, and they have these 2 cows, and they're going to have the cows pull the cart toward Israel and see if it goes straight to Israel, if the Lord guides it, and the cows go, even though the cows presumably would want to go back to their calves and provide milk and suckle their calves, but they don't. They go straight. They go straight toward Israel, and they're lowing. However, it says they're mooing. Moo. They're mooing, and so that could be because they were, protesting against the fact that they have to leave their newborn calves behind. And so this is kind of a miraculous thing that kind of proves that, we better let go of this ark and send it back, because it looks like God is doing this miraculous thing with these cows. It kind of reminds me of the story of St. Anthony. I think it was a donkey that they brought a hungry donkey out, and St. Anthony put a consecrated Eucharistic host and to test to see if the donkey would eat it. But the donkey didn't. It just knelt down before it. So sometimes animals, obey God more than people do, in a miraculous way. The Israelites, when they saw the cart coming down the road by itself with the cows, they were filled with joy, and the ark is returning to us. And there's a big rock there, and they decide to offer a sacrifice. They take the cart itself and break it up and offer those 2 cows as a burnt offering to the Lord, thanking God. And then they bring some Levites, because only Levites can touch the ark. And so the Levites come and do these things and take the ark and the golden gifts that were given to Israel from the Philistines, but then something happens similar to what we've seen earlier, that someone with unconsecrated hands shouldn't touch the ark, and two men try to look into the ark. I guess they take the mercy seat lid off of it and look in, and they are slain, and just shows that the holy things are very sacred, and also they say that the ark is an image of Our Lady, who carries the Word of God within her, and so any blasphemies against the Immaculate Virgin Mary, are going to be severely punished. We have to make reparation to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So that's there in chapter 6, verse 19. And in chapter 7, we have the ark being parked at the house of Abinadab, and apparently that's where it is lodged, and it stays, and it's not mentioned anymore until David goes and gets it after he conquers Jerusalem and wants to bring it up to his capital city. That is where it is kept. There in chapter 7, you have Samuel interceding during a battle, just like Moses had done, with the staff of God above his head, during the battle. Here Samuel prays and offers up a burnt offering, and so the Lord thundered and routed the enemies before Israel. And so Samuel is again proven to be a great leader. However, his two sons are unfaithful, not good leaders, and Samuel's getting old, so the people ask for a king again, and finally God tells him to go ahead and give in to their request and give them a king. And so, but not without warning them, so he gives them all these descriptions of how a king is going to be causing them to suffer, and maybe this was going to be part of their punishment. They're going to have state conscription of young men to be soldiers and workers, and that it's going to take your young women and make them forced to pamper the royal family and serve, and he's going to requisition your property. He's going to give heavy taxes, and so this is kind of perhaps like a divine discipline. So Israel is going to suffer because they suffer bitterness for rejecting his plan, which was originally that God himself would be the king. But they kept asking for a king, and so in chapter 8, verse 10, it says that they were asking for a king. And ironically, the name Saul, their first king, the name means the one asked for. So you get what you ask for. You ask for a king against God's will, and you get a kind of a lousy king. And that's the name Saul. All right, and then we're not going to do chapter 9 right now, because now we're going to study the Gospel of John for a week or so. And but it is kind of ironic that what we would be hearing if we stayed with this first book of Samuel about how the first king is chosen and anointed with oil. But instead we're going to go to the Gospel, and we're going to find out learn about Jesus Christ, who is the Christ, which means anointed one. So before we hear about the kings of Israel, we're going to hear about the King of Kings, Jesus Christ, in the Gospel of John.